I'm Dr. Anne Marie Fiore, and I'm the Director of Graduate Education for the Department of Apparel, Events, and Hospitality Management at Iowa State University. We've made a series of short videos that showcase our alumni of our hospitality management and apparel merchandising design graduate programs. We made these videos because we're really proud of our graduates, but also because many people ask, well, what kinds of positions do you get after a graduate degree? So we hope by showing you some of the things that you can do after a graduate degree, you'll consider graduate education. In this video, you hear from Stefan Tauber. He has a master's in apparel merchandising design, and he'll talk about creating consumer experiences.
I actually finished my undergrad degree at Iowa State in architecture. So what I did right after when I graduated, I actually applied. So I was telling myself, okay, you want to apply to the top 15 architecture firms in the world. If they say no, no problem, but I just want to try it. So I got lucky. 6 months later, I actually got approached by one of my dream firms. They were called OMA, Office for Metropolitan Architecture in Rotterdam. So I right away moved from Ames to Rotterdam, the Netherlands. And there I was specifically hired to design the fashion shows for Miu Miu and Prada. So I was really working on bringing the divisions of Miuccia Prada and her latest collections to life during Fashion Week in Paris and Milan. And then I was also working on a project in the Middle East for the Qatar Foundation, which was pretty much the headquarters for the Qatar Foundation, which was initiated by the Sheikh of Qatar. And there I was really looking at like the working space of the royal family. I was looking at the spa facilities. I was working on the working spaces, lounges, cafeterias, etc., etc. So it was a total of 12 stories, probably 2,000 plus rooms, and really approaching it more from a design standpoint. Now, the way I learned it at this particular office and even with school and personally, I was very interested in designing spaces based on humans. How would people actually use the space? How would they walk through the space? What did you want to look at it? Often you see architecture kind of forcing people into a certain space, but I was more about really looking at what do people need to really have an enjoyable time in the space. And so yeah, so my background really before entering the graduate program was being an architect, being a designer. So when I was in the Netherlands, and like I said, I was designing the fashion shows. I was really excited about those projects in particular because they showed me a very different facet of design, right? Because or even a different industry. Because architecture itself is very long term. It's very slow. It takes a very long time to pick up. Some projects take 4 to 5 years at a time, even more. And at the end, you find yourself designing the same things over and over, and it's just very strenuous process. So with fashion, it was very dynamic. It was very fast paced. There were the seasons, and now keep in mind there are not 2 seasons anymore. We're not talking about fall, winter, spring, summer anymore. Now we talk about drop cultures. We talk about multiple events and seasons throughout the year, right? Which are always very different, very unpredictable. And also the beauty about fashion, quite honestly, was again it was about people, right? And what people wanted. So to me, it was really exciting to come back for that and really understand more about that industry. But then also I felt like, okay, I was a designer and I understood the design principles, right? And when you're a designer, you find yourself running out of inspiration sometimes because there are only so many shapes, there are only so many colors, there are only so many textures that inspire you. Now, when you start focusing more on understanding the consumer mindsets, the insights in the category, and also understanding business itself and what brands want, what consumers actually want, you get a whole new toolkit of things, how you now can design spaces, but also how you can start understanding retail. So to me, it was very, very important for 2 points, right? To become a better designer because I was hoping that graduate school would help me to learn more about consumer mindsets in the industry. And secondly, understanding really the business mindset of brands. What do brands need? What are their objectives and how do they measure success, right? Because for a designer, we are not as much measured on success. It's either somebody likes it or doesn't like it. It's not so much about if it's effective or not. So it was really important for me to combine that really emotional side of designing pretty things, but getting better around that, about the consumer and what they want, and also on the other side, understanding brands and really being able to talk to brands more in a language they would understand. More importantly, what really my focus was on, like I said before, I felt like as a designer, I was hitting a wall a little bit from just approaching it from an inspirational side design. So I was really keen to learn about consumer mindsets and really understand, what do people want? If they go in a store, if they go in a space, what is actually, what are they actually thinking, and what does it actually take to even get people into a retail environment? So the whole idea before that, and then how do I keep the conversation going after they leave the retail environment? So I felt like, and also what do brands do to launch new products, to take on new categories? Maybe they started online and now they wanna show up in the physical world. So there was a lot of complexity and a lot of problems I couldn't really solve as a designer. So I felt like, okay, with this program now, I actually get a good idea of this is what brands actually need, and now it makes a lot of sense why I'm actually designing these stores. So now, through the years, I took on multiple challenges for many brands, and I could just name a couple here. I did the same for BMW. I did the same for Spotify. I did the same for, I would call it almost sneakers and speakers for a while, but for Nike, for Adidas, for New Balance, for Sonos, for Sennheiser, and now most recently for a lot of beauty brands, if you think about Buxom, Maybelline, NARS, etc., and really started looking at what is the problem, if it was launching in a new market, if it was launching a new product, if it was losing interest in the category and people don't resonate with your brand anymore, and really start looking at that. So now in my current position, just to name another example, which I didn't even mention yet, I'm working with Hilton hotels right now. And what I'm really doing for them, for instance, like helping them to do better retail, right? Like to help them sell their destinations, their properties, because Hilton has 15 different hotel chains underneath their umbrella company. How could I help them to sell these properties better? Because right now, one might say it feels very much like Hilton is always on sale, it's always selling something, right? And the problem with that is that sometimes the brand right now asks the consumer to always buy. And now, where my degree helped me a lot with was going into that brand right now, looking at what it's doing and actually finding some opportunities there. And the opportunities you may find there is, oh, they might didn't consider the consumer mindsets of a traveler right away, right? Because if you now start looking at these mindsets, you actually realize is that you can't ask from a consumer to buy a hotel right away, because they go through 3 stages. They go from dreaming to deciding to booking. So now if I ask them to book right away, and never got them through the stage of dreaming and deciding, they will never book with me. So now my degree helped me to understand that, and now I can actually go back to the brand and say like, hey, from a consumer journey, we have to think about these 2 steps before as well to be really successful of making a sale. Now, as a designer, I was never able to necessarily drive revenue for a brand, but now as for my degree of like an experienced strategist, what now my title is, or with that, now I can drive revenue. Now I can make brands actually successful again. I can help them launch new products and still be creative in the way I do it. What's very interesting now is, as you heard in the news, Nike is pulling back on their sales outlets, right? They don't want to, they want to create more scarcity again, which you see as a model in pop culture right now anyway in apparel. If you see it from Supreme or Palace or other brands, they really buy into a scarcity model where they offer limited products at a selected time at a selected location to create hype, right? So this is very effective. And Nike is applying something in a more smaller scale, right? Because what they notice is that the sneaker market itself is very, very lucrative for brands, right? If you think about an app like Goat, which is like a third-party retailer for sneakers, it's one of the, I believe, the second most successful shoe sales platform in the world right now, after Nike, I believe. So what Nike did now is they're pulling back on the retail outlets. Now, if you pull back, you want to be very focused on the stories you want to tell in the retail formats you have left, especially those stores you own, which are actually like Nike owned. So for instance, in New York, where I live right now, we have two stores which are very reminiscent of that concept. So we have one store down in Soho, and we have like a Nike 650, which just opened. And what we really do there is try to, once a month or once every 2 months, I believe, we try to tell different narratives which are unique and which drive traffic into the space, right? So because again, we wanna give people a reason to come back into the store. So, and now again, through my degree, I had to like start thinking about the mindset of what drives people back into the space. So right now, for instance, for the World Cup, what we did is you could go into a Nike store and you could start customizing your own jerseys, right? And not just World Cup jerseys for your teams, but your own personal jersey where you can put your badges on, your numbers, your name, and fully customize them. You see a lot different narratives we created in the past for the Air Force One shoes, etc., etc. Again, the execution is designed, but the actual thought process and the strategy is very much grounded in how do we incentivize consumers to come into a Nike space and really make it exciting for them. Another example for New Balance. So New Balance has a very different budget. They're still very much a legacy brand. They're very successful, but they're not a global player like Nike would be, which is absolutely fine, because now for me, I had to come up with more clever executions because we talk about smaller budgets. So for instance, New Balance, we started creating, at one point we created a coffee cart. And the idea was like, New York Fashion Week and New York, which is very iconic for New York, is the street vendors selling everything from chicken over rice to the coffee in the iconic Greek patterned paper coffee cup, right? So what we actually did is during Fashion Week, we posted a New Balance branded coffee cart, which was introducing the new shoe model at the time. And it pretty much worked the same way as a street vendor. You could get free donuts, you could get free coffee, which was very much in New York at its heart, but at the same time, you could also check out the latest kicks from New Balance. Now, that didn't mean you have to do a big store. That didn't mean you have to blow millions of dollars on a retail fix-up, right? It was a coffee cart. It was clever. It was fun. It got the hype and the buzz the brand wanted. But again, the point I want to land there is, it was not just thinking about, oh, we want to create a coffee cart. You wouldn't really come to that conclusion if you would just put a design angle on it. Again, what I learned through my degree was like thinking about what is truly New York. So what is true to the market where I want to land with this brand? What is true to Fashion Week? So in Fashion Week, a lot of people walk back and forth between the shows. You have a lot of pedestrian traffic. So that's good because food carts are normally on the sidewalk. So they're right in the heart of pedestrian traffic. And then also, a shoe is a consumable. So are donuts and coffee. So again, connecting that together and making that a sales point. So again, the execution, very beautiful design, fun, hip, cool, right? It was red and on fire. But the core to land at the strategic idea was really, again, based on where do I want to land this idea? What is my consumer about? What does my brand want to see? And then again, how much money do I want to spend? And at the end, I would have never been able to do that if I wouldn't have gone back to grad school, because really my degree landed that strategic thinking, which I kind of had buried in the bottom of my brain, but Iowa State really helped me to unpack it and actually be aware of that it exists in my brain. And now I use it all the time. And now I'm like, oh, I could never live without it. But now I do. Now I have it. And thank you, Iowa State, for giving me giving that thinking back to me.